Tonight we are looking at 3 horrifying caving stories that went horribly wrong. A cooling suit fails inside the crystal cave of Naica, one of the most lethal rooms on Earth. A rigger walks alone into Sistema Huautla, the deepest cave in the Western Hemisphere, and never walks out. And a wall of nitrogen meets a diver 90 meters down Eagle's Nest, the deadliest dive site in America. Each story starts with confidence and ends in chaos. As always, viewer discretion is advised. The heat came through the steel airlock door into Marco Tellez's palm on June 3, 2025, deep underground in the Naica mine in Mexico, and through its fogged glass glowed the Cueva de los Cristales, a chamber of selenite crystals the size of pine trees, and one of the most lethal environments on Earth. Not because of what can fall on you, because of what the air does to you. He was carrying an ice-packed cooling suit, a respirator, and a schedule with one number circled twice. Marco was 33 years old, a geologist who had surveyed mines on 3 continents, making his 4th entry into the crystal cave. His wife kept a photo of him beside the biggest crystal on the fridge, and every trip he promised her the same: 25 minutes, not a second more. Here is what you need to understand about the cave at Naica. The rock around it sits over a magma chamber, and the chamber holds the air at 58 degrees with humidity near 100%. In that combination, sweat does not evaporate, and a human body cannot shed heat at all. Unprotected, a fit adult has about 10 minutes before coordination goes. In a cooling suit, the window stretches to 30. The cave does not attack you, it keeps you, like a kiln. The descent to the chamber ran through the mine's own tunnels, the cage down, then a walking decline where the walls went from cool rock to warm to hand-hot, his headlamp beam thickening in the saturated air. Through the airlock, the cave took his breath the way it always did, crystal beams crossing the chamber, some 11 meters long. He started the survey clock on his wrist and went to work on the far anchor point. At minute 19, that is the moment the routine stopped. The ice water circulating through his suit went from cold to merely cool against his chest. A pump line pinched somewhere behind his shoulder. The suit had already failed him, because a kinked line does not announce itself. It just stops working. What he didn't know, logging one more measurement, his core was climbing a degree every few minutes now. And that delay would cost him the walk back. He stood to leave and the chamber tilted. His vision sparkled, his legs argued. Panic offered to help. It never helps. He keyed the radio and it crackled back, and he put one glove on a crystal the size of a bus, hand hot, like everything, and made himself do the arithmetic out loud. Because this is what heat does that cold never will. Cold gives you hours of warning and shivering to spend. Heat takes the mind first, politely, and leaves the legs for last. Watch the numbers. Marco was standing inside. 90 meters to the airlock, over crystal beams polished like wet glass, on maybe 8 minutes of reliable legs. A core temperature crossing 39 degrees and climbing. And a safety man behind the fogged glass watching a survey light that had stopped moving. And this is the part that decides everything in the furnace. You do not rest. Resting in that air is not recovery, it is cooking. You move slow, you move now, and you count your steps out loud so the safety man can hear your voice thinning on the radio. Marco crossed the chamber one crystal at a time, calling his count into the radio, his own voice arriving in his ears from very far away. The beams creaked under his boots like ship timbers. At 40 steps, he stopped knowing why he was counting. He kept counting anyway. The safety man met him 4 steps from the airlock, having broken his own protocol by 3 meters, and hauled him through the hissing door into air that felt arctic and was 35 degrees. They packed him in the mine's ice room, monitored a heartbeat doing 170 in a man lying still, and watched the confusion drain out of him over 1 long hour, like silt settling in water. Marco survived with a heat injury the report measured at core temperature 40.5 degrees, and the incident review ruled that the suit had failed at a pinched coolant line, while the save belonged to a spoken number count. The safety man testified he tracked him across 90 meters entirely by voice. 40 counted steps of it after the counting stopped making sense to the man doing it. The Naica protocol changed that season, on the report's own last line. Suit lines now route in front, where a worker can see them, and every entry carries a spoken count on open radio, minute 1 to minute 30. He survived the furnace by 4 steps, the review ruled, and by the habit of counting out loud when counting no longer made sense. Marco went back once more, months later, to finish the anchor survey. 25 minutes, not a second more, and the photo beside the fridge stayed where it was. The crystal cave of Naica is the most beautiful and most lethal room on Earth, he tells the new surveyors at every briefing. 30 minutes of beauty priced in degrees. And it is beautiful the way a furnace is beautiful, from the far side of the glass. On April 12, 2025, Iris Fontaine signed the expedition logbook at the entrance to Sistema Huautla in Oaxaca, the deepest cave in the Western Hemisphere, 1,560 meters of it. Wrote, "Rigging check, sump camp, back by dark," and walked in alone. The logbook still has the pen mark where her sentence ends. Nobody has written the next line in it since. Iris was 37 years old, a rigger who had led rope teams in Huautla for 6 seasons. Strong enough that the rule she broke that morning, nobody moves alone below the 400-meter level, was a rule she had written herself. Her brother got a text from base camp at 6 a.m. "Last one, then home for your birthday." Here is what you need to understand about the deepest cave in the Western Hemisphere. It is not one cave. Huautla is a country. 25 entrances scattered across a Oaxacan mountainside. 90 kilometers of surveyed passage. Shafts stacked on shafts for a vertical mile. And corners of it no lamp has ever touched. Search doctrine in cave country is brutal arithmetic. A caver overdue below 400 meters gives searchers about 48 hours of realistic clock, and every branching passage doubles the map they owe. Her route that morning was rope she knew personally. The entrance series she had rigged herself in March, down the big shafts one rebelay at a time, along the traverse line toward the sump camp at 700 meters. Half a day of travel she could have described with her eyes closed. The camera on her helmet, recovered later, shows 40 minutes of clean descent. Rope hissing through the rack, rebelays passing under gloved hands, her breath easy. And then it shows her clip the camera to a station anchor at the top of the traverse, lens toward the shaft, and walk out of frame. At 9 that night, that is the moment the expedition changed jobs, because Back by Dark had failed at sundown. And in Huautla, the difference between late and lost is measured against a checkout time written in her own handwriting. What they didn't know, dropping the entrance series by headlamp, they were beginning the largest cave search in the mountain's history. And that choice would be read aloud in a courtroom 3 years later as the last fact anyone owns. The traverse line was rigged and empty. Her camera hung at the anchor. Her rope bag sat below it. Panic wanted the shaft searched first. The search leader refused. Discipline runs downhill, and 60 people were about to follow his. Because this is the mathematics of a missing caver. You do not search where fear points. You search where the map branches, junction by junction. And you write off each passage in ink so nobody spends the clock twice. Watch what the mountain asked of them. 60 searchers from 4 countries, 19 days underground, in rotations of 30 hours down and 12 up. Divers pushed 2 sumps below the traverse, 60 hours of it in silt-blind water. Riggers dropped 41 shafts and side pits, some for the first time in human history, rock clattering down ahead of every rope. The search wrote 11 kilometers of new survey looking for one woman, and the mountain fought back the whole time. A storm on day 6 put the entrance streams up and pulled the dive teams out for 48 hours. On day 11, a searcher broke an ankle in the breakdown and became, briefly, the second rescue. On day 14, they found her spare battery pack at the lip of a breakdown field 200 meters past the traverse. standing upright on a rock, the way a careful rigger sets things down meaning to come back. It was the first object in 14 days of searching, and it was the last. Past it, the breakdown, a collapse zone of house-sized blocks with black gaps breathing between them, water dripping somewhere below, a maze inside the maze. Probe teams went as deep into it as bolted rope and scents allowed, their shouts echoing back flat and small. The gaps go down for 60 vertical meters. The mountain kept the rest of the story. On day 19, the search was suspended, with every branching passage on the route written off in ink except the one nobody can finish. The last team out re-rigged the entrance series for whoever comes next, left her camera anchor bolted in place, and carried the logbook up into the daylight to a brother who had flown in on day 2 and learned to rig rope while he waited. He was at the entrance every one of the 19 mornings, and he was there on the 20th when nobody came up behind him. Iris Fontaine was never found. 3 years on, a court declared her dead, and the inquest ruled what caving already knew. Alone past the 400-meter level, in a breakdown field, a single wrong step needs no witnesses. The report runs 90 pages and proves only where she is not. Her rule stands in the expedition handbook with her initials on it now, and nobody in Huautla moves alone below 400 meters. The camera anchor is still bolted at the traverse, and teams passing it clip a fresh flag to the station every season, because the deepest cave in the Western Hemisphere holds one rigger the maps cannot close around, and the country of Huautla keeps what it keeps. On February 7th, 2026, Petra Lang slipped into a cold green pond in the Florida woods that looks like a puddle for cattle. Eagle's Nest, the deadliest cave diving site in America, a modest hole that opens underground into a chamber wider than a stadium and more than 90 meters deep. The locals call the entrance shaft the chimney. Divers call the big chamber the ballroom, and the deep gallery the basement. She carried twin tanks, 2-stage bottles of decompression gas, and a dive plan her mentor had signed the night before. Petra was 30 years old, a technical diver who had logged 400 dives and trained 2 years for this specific hole. Her father had dived Eagle's Nest in the 90s, and every summer she reread his logbook page about the basement door, the arch at depth where the real cave begins. Here is what you need to understand about depth on compressed air. Past 60 meters, nitrogen stops being a gas you breathe and becomes a drug you drink. Divers call it narcosis, the wall of gin, and it always arrives at the worst address. And the tank does not care that your mind is slow. At 90 meters, every minute of bottom time buys minutes of mandatory decompression, a ceiling made of arithmetic, with your own blood as the enforcer. The chimney took her down like a well, daylight shrinking to a green coin overhead, the ballroom opening around her lamp at 30 meters, vast and silent. She dropped the slope past 60, 70, 80, checked her gauges at the basement door, 160 bar, on plan, and hung at the arch for her allowed 60 seconds, looking into the dark her father wrote about. At the turn, that is the moment the dive stopped obeying her. She rose off the arch 2 meters too fast, felt the gin wall shift, and reached for the line with a hand that arrived late. Her focus had already failed at depth because narcosis does not knock. It moves in while you are admiring the furniture. What she didn't know, watching her own glove close on water instead of line, she was drifting off the slope toward the wide black nothing of the ballroom floor. And that delay would bill her in decompression. Her lamp swung a slow circle and found nothing at all. No wall, no line. Panic leaned on the door. Training held it. She did the one drill narcosis cannot eat because it lives in the spine. Stop, exhale long, look up. Because this is the geometry that saves deep divers. In a chamber, the bubbles know the way to the ceiling, and the ceiling slope runs one direction, up toward the chimney, like a basement stair. Watch her ledger at 90 meters. Each breath at that depth spent 10 times the gas of a surface breath. Every minute she wandered added 3 minutes of hang time to a decompression bill already past an hour. And the gin wall sat on her shoulders the whole climb, whispering that none of it was urgent. She followed her bubbles up the slope, one lamp length at a time, breathing on a count of 6, watching the silver spheres wobble toward a ceiling she could not see yet, but could trust. The cave handed her the line back at 70 meters, right where the slope pinches. Her own arrows pointing home. Little triangles of tape she had placed with warm, clear hands an age ago. The gin drained off her mind through the 60s and 50s, the way it always does, leaving her cold, clear, and owing the ceiling 1 hour and 40 minutes of patience. She paid it in full, hanging on the deco line under the green coin of daylight. 20 minutes at 6 meters, 40 at 4.5, her regulator hissing its slow count. Her stage bottles emptied in slow motion while the chimney glowed above her like a porch light, and the line creaked softly in the outflow, and nothing in the world was allowed to hurry. Her support diver came down at the 90-minute mark with a fresh bottle and a slate that said, "Dinner is on you," and stayed for the last stop, breathing beside her in the green. Petra Lang surfaced 2 hours and 9 minutes after she left, with 40 bar across 4 tanks, a depth log reading 91 meters, and hands that shook from cold and nothing else. She survived on a drill and a slope, and the debrief report wrote one line she has read every day since. The dive had failed at the turn, not at depth. 2 meters high, off the arch, and the margin at the basement door is 0 meters wide. Her mentor signed no deep plans for her for 6 months, and she thanked him for it. Petra still dives Eagle's Nest, shallower now, teaching the chimney and the ballroom to divers with 2 years of patience left to spend in the pond that nearly claimed her. She makes every one of them recite the report's one true finding before they splash, the ruled-in-ink geometry of it. Bubbles find ceilings, ceilings find slopes, slopes find home. Her father's logbook page is laminated in her truck, with one line of her own added under his. The deadliest pond in America keeps a door at the bottom, and the door is not locked. That is the whole problem.